G'day everyone, and we're back for another year in fertiliser world. Welcome to a CSBP market update. Same old faces, I'm Johnston. Welcome back, Ben Sudlow, Sales Strategy and Reliability Manager.
Good morning and Happy New Year, Gray.
Thank you, Ben. Happy New Year to you. It has been almost a month since we last caught up, so that generally gives a bit of time for things to evolve in the always fun world of global markets.
Yeah.
And I guess the main thing that has evolved that affects all the nutrient categories in this period where we are procuring all the nutrient categories is the exchange rate of the Australian dollar versus the US dollar. That's probably the appropriate place to start.
We were talking about it back then in the first week of December that, you know, the exchange rate had already fallen, and since then we're down, I think, maybe 2.5 cents or something since then. Probably the most significant one of that being the phosphates, and maybe we start a little bit there. FOB prices haven't changed a great deal. They've been pretty static over the Christmas period and the holiday period. The difference between when we last spoke and today, in Aussie dollar terms, there's about a $35 difference in terms of increased cost of MAP landed. And if you want to put in perspective to when we saw the highest exchange rate, which was in the back end of September, I think, where the exchange rate nearly hit 70 cents, there's just over $100 difference in the exchange rate effect alone on a basis that our FOB and freight hasn't changed.
And so over that period you reference as sort of September to now is the period that is very relevant for procurement of the ammonium phosphates. And so saying we've sort of, due to exchange rate, seen a landed cost increase of about that sort of $100 over that period, over that period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's still phosphates to procure, I suppose?
We've been bringing phosphates in for months. There's been phosphates coming in over the Christmas period, but those last shipments for us and others that sort of arrive for the seeding for the arriving April and March and April and May, they're still to come in. So the effect of, obviously the FOB effect changes up or down, but the realities of today's exchange rate are definitely going to affect on those last couple, and probably most importantly on those last ones. We're also going to make a determination of how much of that last shipment do we load. Are we expecting the demand to be to fill the ship up, or try and get a bigger ship, or do we slightly short load it? So getting that last view of demand is a critical one for us now.
Yeah, so that's, I guess, a way of saying for people out there who are still making commitment decisions on phosphates, important to get those orders in relatively short order.
The window is closing, so to speak, for us to buy more, and to make those final determination of how much we put on final vessels.
The last couple of updates we've done, there were some murmurs around Chinese availability of phosphates in the market. Is there any update on how China has supplied or otherwise the global market?
So as what we last spoke was that they would not export, and that's now become the case. Yeah, it's had the effect of both increasing supply locally in China, but it's also the effect that in China that the prices have dropped. So they've got a double effect, that domestic price in China have dropped because it's a plentiful supply now. I think some of those producers who have been forced to not export have been having to supply into the domestic market when they can see better price in the export market, might be too happy about it, but that's the way it is.
From a global market perspective, a seaborne market perspective, that was already baked into price expectations in the market. There's not been some jump in the FOB price?
No, it's definitely kept the market tight, and that means prices haven't, they really haven't moved down, but they haven't, to any great extent to now, haven't moved up to any great extent either.
Okay, so that's phosphates, and I guess the other form of phosphate, superphosphate, CSBP still has good supply of that product?
Yep.
Moving then to nitrogen and the urea and flexion markets. Any great movements in there since we last caught up?
So last time there was an Indian tender had been mooted, came out for supply for product that was going to load in January through to and be supplied through to the first week in Feb. They put a tender out for, I think it was about 1.5 million tonnes. They got bids accepted for only about 180,000 tonnes. Because the producers said we're not prepared to go down to the price of the lowest bid, so they only got the lowest bid prices. So the expectation of the market, that's all prices move up, and because the expectation of the market is now India didn't get the volume, they're now going to have to come back again. Whilst they haven't yet, there's a view that they'll come back now in this first couple of weeks of January to make sure they can get volume for February and March. So the producers sat back, prices moved up since we last spoke. FOB prices have moved up by about $15 to $20 a tonne, and the combined effect of that and exchange rate falling, as we spoke about in the phosphates, is that urea prices are somewhere between 55 and 60 Aussie dollars, are higher than what they were in December. That said, there's plenty of time for the market here and us to bring product in. For the bulk urea offtake market, it's not really going to happen, of course, until April, May, June, July.
Increase in the landed cost of urea probably starts to make Flexion look then even more attractive. Has that market disconnected a little bit more?
For the first time in a while, Flexion prices have started to edge up as well, not surprisingly. They've been held down for a bit longer. They didn't follow up urea up last time urea had a run up. They've definitely moved up a little bit now, and partly because the US domestic market is now starting to place product for the end of April. So the expectation of local demand and demand coming out of Europe is starting to see UAN prices starting to move up as well.
So it sounds like there is, for the first time in a while, some, upward pressure in the seaboard market for Flexion, and notwithstanding that, back of the envelope would suggest it's still probably becoming more affordable as a nitrogen source relative to urea.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the urea price has gone up at a faster rate than what the Flexion price has gone up offshore, and the implication of that is that it therefore becomes more affordable relative to urea on an end basis.
The CSBP still, though, has plentiful supply for contracting?
We do. We've been making a lot of UAN, Flexion. We've got product coming in, and we've got product available to sell as well.
Very good. And then potash, any update on what's happening in that market?
Producers keen to move prices up. They've done that. I think you're seeing that come through in Brazil, Southeast Asia. Not huge amounts yet. Supply seems to be still pretty okay. Broadly speaking, there's definitely slight upward pressure on potash prices, FOB, and again, the exchange rate's definitely putting more pressure up on vessels that be arriving this financial year, assuming that the exchange rate stays down where it is now as those come to be priced over coming months.
You mentioned China before in relation to phosphates and nitrogen. We know that China's going to become increasingly relevant as a supplier of sulphate of ammonia probably to this market as well. Is there any update on Gran NS supply, noting that, as we've mentioned a few times over the last 6 months or so that we've been talking, there's going to be this change washed through the West Australian market in terms of what the source of sulphate of ammonia is likely to be?
Look, there's little doubt that the world has woken up to the fact that there's no locally supplied ammonium sulphate. There is plenty of supply out of China. That's one nutrient.
There's no export ban.
No, they're not holding on to that. So there's plenty of. We're lining up to make sure we've got adequate supply of raw materials for production, but also that we're getting granular product, and that's starting to flow into our system over the next 6 weeks or so. Probably
another product though that, particularly given we're seeing a likely demand shift in terms of timing and product, that again we want growers to be giving some sort of indication of requirement of that product.
Definitely, because the difference here is that we're now buying shipments rather than having it drip fed out of a production plant, and making sure we're getting the right number of shipments and getting the volume right, getting the right ship size right, and any early indications of that, make sure we get that. And that's a product that has definitely increased in demand in recent years, particularly those canola plantings last year saw a fair run on ammonium sulphate.
Okay, Ben, comprehensive rundown of the foreign exchange rates, P, N, K and S. Anything else we should be touching on?
That's probably enough for now, Gray. Thank you.
Very good. On that bombshell, thank you, Ben, for joining us again, and thank you all out there in Fertiliser World. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Gray.
This podcast is provided as general information only. The content of this podcast is not a recommendation and has been prepared without taking your objectives or circumstances into account. Before acting on the content of this, you should consider its appropriateness to your circumstances and seek independent advice.